My name is Adrian, and I come from what everyone always called the perfect family. For siblings, loving parents, and a grandfather who built our family's construction business from nothing into a multi-million-dollar empire. We weren't just family, we were a dynasty, or so I thought. Growing up, our house was the center of everything. Every Sunday, the entire extended family would gather at my parents' sprawling ranch house for dinner. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and always my grandfather, Papa Romano, holding court at the head of the massive dining room table, telling stories about the early days when he poured concrete with his bare hands to build what would become Romano Construction. I was the youngest of 4 children, and from the time I could walk, everyone knew I was different from my siblings. While my older brothers, Marcus and Vincent, were content to party their way through college and my sister Isabella focused on her social media influencer career, I was obsessed with the family business. I spent every summer working on construction sites, learning every aspect of the company from the ground up. Papa Romano used to joke that I had concrete dust in my veins instead of blood. By the time I graduated with a degree in civil engineering, I was already managing major projects and implementing innovations that saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. My siblings never seemed bothered by my dedication to the business. Marcus worked in sales, but was more interested in his golf game than closing deals. Vincent handled some administrative duties, but was always talking about his dreams of becoming a professional musician. Isabella helped with marketing occasionally, but treated it like a hobby between her real passion projects. None of them seemed to want the responsibility that came with truly running Romano Construction, and I was grateful for that. I loved the business, lived and breathed it, and assumed that my natural succession into leadership was understood by everyone. Papa Romano certainly acted like it was. He'd pull me aside at family dinners to discuss expansion plans, new technologies, and long-term strategies. He taught me everything about client relationships, vendor management, and the delicate balance of running a family business where personal and professional relationships intersected constantly. Adrian, he'd say, his weathered hands gripping my shoulders, this company is my legacy, but you're going to be the one who takes it to the next level. Your brothers and sisters, they're good kids, but they don't have the fire. You do. If you're enjoying the story of family betrayal and wondering how I'm going to get my revenge, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. I believed him completely. Why wouldn't I? I was the one working 70-hour weeks while my siblings showed up for the easy parts. I was the one who'd sacrificed dating relationships and social opportunities to master every aspect of our operations. I was the one Papa Romano called when there were crises to handle or major decisions to make. The first hint that something was wrong came about 4 months ago, during what should have been a routine family dinner. Papa Romano seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone and having whispered conversations with my father in the hallway. When I asked if everything was okay, he waved me off with his usual gruff dismissal. Just some legal paperwork. Nothing for you to worry about, he said. You focus on that Henderson project. That's what matters right now. I trusted him, just like I'd always trusted every member of my family. We were Romanos. We stuck together. We protected each other. We built something bigger than any of us could achieve alone. The second red flag was more obvious, though I still didn't understand its significance at the time. My siblings started showing up to the office more frequently, having meetings with Papa Romano that I wasn't included in. When I'd ask about these gatherings, I'd get vague explanations about family planning and future considerations. We're just discussing some administrative stuff, Isabella would say with her perfect social media smile. Nothing that affects day-to-day operations. Marcus and Vincent would echo similar explanations, always making it sound like these meetings were about trivial matters that didn't require my input. Since I was busy managing multiple construction projects and handling the technical aspects of our largest contracts, I accepted their explanations and focused on what I thought mattered most, keeping our clients happy and our projects profitable. Looking back, I can see how naive I was. But when you trust people completely, when you've never had a reason to question their motives, it's almost impossible to recognize manipulation happening right in front of you. The devastating truth revealed itself 6 weeks ago on a Thursday morning that started like any other. I arrived at our company headquarters early, as usual, planning to review project timelines before our weekly family business meeting. Papa Romano's assistant, Mrs. Chin, who'd worked for us for over 15 years, seemed unusually nervous when I greeted her. "Adrian," she said hesitantly, "there's something you need to know before the meeting today." I paused, sensing something serious in her tone. Mrs. Chin had always been fiercely loyal to Papa Romano, handling his confidential matters with absolute discretion. For her to approach me directly meant something significant was happening. "What is it?" I asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. She glanced around nervously, then pulled out a manila folder that she handed to me with shaking hands. "I've been your grandfather's secretary for 15 years, she said quietly. "I've watched you build this company with your own hands." "What's in that folder?" "It's not right, Adrian. It's not right at all." I opened the folder and felt my world collapse. Inside were legal documents transferring the majority ownership of Romano Construction to a newly formed partnership between Marcus, Vincent, and Isabella. Papa Romano retained a minority stake, but operational control was being handed over to my siblings, the same siblings who couldn't be bothered to show up for major client presentations or weekend emergency calls. But that wasn't the most devastating part. As I read through the paperwork, I discovered that this transfer had been planned for over 8 months. Every family meeting I'd missed, every private conversation my siblings had been having, every moment when I'd felt slightly excluded. It had all been part of an elaborate plan to remove me from succession while keeping me working to maximize the company's value before the transfer. The final document in the folder was a proposed employment contract for me to remain as senior project manager under my siblings' leadership, with a salary that was less than what some of our subcontractors earned annually. I sat there in Mrs. Chen's office, staring at these documents, feeling like someone had ripped my heart out of my chest. This wasn't just about business. This was my family, people I'd loved and trusted my entire life, systematically planning to steal everything I'd worked for while smiling at me across the dinner table every Sunday. "How long have you known about this?" I asked Mrs. Chen, my voice barely a whisper. "The paperwork started crossing my desk about 6 months ago," she replied, tears forming in her eyes. "At first, I thought it was just preliminary planning, something your grandfather was considering for tax purposes. But as the meetings continued and I saw how they were deliberately excluding you." She trailed off, but I understood. Mrs. Chen had watched me grow up in this business, had seen me sacrifice everything for Romano Construction, and she couldn't stand by while my family betrayed me. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. "Because the final signatures are happening this afternoon," she said. "After today's meeting, the transfer will be complete. Once your siblings own the company, there's nothing anyone can do to stop them from pushing you out entirely." I felt sick. The family meeting I'd been planning to attend, where I'd expected to discuss upcoming projects and quarterly results, was actually the final stage of my own elimination from the company I'd devoted my life to building. I needed to understand how deep this betrayal went, so I asked Mrs. Chin the question that terrified me most. "What about Papa Romano? Does he really want this?" Her expression told me everything I needed to know before she spoke. "Your grandfather, he's been convinced that your siblings need this opportunity to prove themselves." Marcus presented him with projections showing how they could expand into commercial real estate. Vincent created a whole presentation about diversifying into renovation and restoration work. Isabella developed a marketing strategy for targeting luxury home clients. "All of that was my work," I said, the pieces clicking together. "Those projections, those expansion plans, I developed all of that during our strategy sessions." Mrs. Chin nodded sadly. "They took your ideas and presented them as their own collaborative effort. They convinced your grandfather that you were too focused on day-to-day operations to see the bigger picture, and that they needed control of the company to implement these innovative strategies." The betrayal was even worse than I'd initially understood. My siblings hadn't just planned to steal my inheritance. They'd stolen my ideas, my strategies, and my vision for the company's future, then used those very concepts to convince Papa Romano that they deserved to control what I'd built. I spent the next hour sitting in my truck in the parking lot, trying to process what I'd learned. Part of me wanted to storm into that meeting and confront everyone directly. But another part, the strategic part that had made me successful in business, urged me to think this through carefully. If I confronted them without a plan, they'd simply deny everything and accelerate their timeline. I needed to understand exactly what they'd done and figure out how to protect myself before making any moves. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of attending the family meeting, I drove straight to the law office of Sarah Martinez, the attorney who'd handled some of our larger construction contracts. If my family wanted to play legal games, I needed to understand the rules. Sarah listened to my story with growing amazement and anger. As I explained the situation and showed her the documents Mrs. Chin had given me, her expression shifted from professional interest to genuine outrage. "Adrian," she said after reviewing everything carefully, "this isn't just ethically questionable. There are some serious legal issues here. If your siblings used your proprietary strategies and business plans to convince your grandfather to transfer ownership, that could constitute fraud." "What do you mean?" I asked, desperately hoping she saw something I'd missed. "Well, first of all, who developed these expansion strategies? Who created the financial projections and market analysis that convinced your grandfather this transfer was a good idea?" "I did," I replied. "All of it. Those are strategies I've been developing with Papa Romano over the past 2 years." Sarah leaned back in her chair, a slight smile crossing her face. "And do you have documentation proving your authorship of these plans?" For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt a spark of hope. "Everything. I have emails, drafts, research files, and meeting notes. I document everything for our business planning purposes." "Excellent," Sarah said, her smile widening. "Because if your siblings presented your work as their own to manipulate your grandfather into signing over the company, we have grounds for challenging this entire transfer." We spent the next 3 hours building a case that would make my family regret underestimating me. But Sarah had an even better idea than just challenging the transfer. She suggested we let it proceed and then systematically dismantle it from the inside. "Here's what I think we should do," she explained. "Let them complete the transfer. Let them take control of the company. But while they're celebrating their victory, we'll be documenting every instance of them using your stolen intellectual property and every mistake they make trying to run operations they don't understand." It was a brilliant strategy, but it required me to do the hardest thing imaginable, pretend that I didn't know about their betrayal while they celebrated stealing my life's work. That evening, I went to my parents' house for dinner as if nothing had changed. My siblings were all there, barely able to contain their excitement about what they'd accomplished. Papa Romano seemed subdued, almost guilty, but he kept glancing at my siblings with what looked like pride. "Adrian," Papa Romano said as we sat down to eat, "your brothers and sister have been working on some exciting new directions for the company. I think you're going to be impressed by their initiative." I forced myself to smile and nod. "That sounds great, Papa. I'd love to hear about it." Marcus cleared his throat importantly. "Well, we've been developing some strategies for expanding into commercial real estate development. The profit margins are significantly higher than residential construction, and we think Romano Construction is ready to make that leap." As he outlined his plan, I had to grip my fork tightly to keep from saying anything. Every word out of his mouth was directly from a presentation I'd created 6 months earlier. Every financial projection, every market analysis, every strategic consideration, stolen and presented as his own brilliant insight. Vincent jumped in next, describing his innovative ideas for restoration and renovation services. Again, these were concepts I'd researched and developed, complete with vendor relationships I'd personally established and cost structures I'd calculated. Isabella finished by presenting her creative marketing strategies for targeting luxury home clients. She even used the exact slogan I developed and the demographic analysis I'd spent weeks researching. Throughout this entire presentation, my family smiled and nodded as if they were hearing these ideas for the first time. Papa Romano beamed with pride at his grandchildren's entrepreneurial spirit, while my parents praised their collaborative approach to taking the business to the next level. I sat there, watching the people I'd loved and trusted my entire life systematically steal everything I'd worked for, and somehow managed to keep smiling. "These are really impressive ideas," I said when they finished. "I'm curious about implementation timelines and resource allocation. These kinds of expansions require significant capital investment and operational restructuring." My siblings exchanged nervous glances. This was the part they hadn't thought through, the actual work of making these stolen ideas a reality. Well, Marcus said hesitantly, we were hoping you could help us work out those details. You know the operational side better than anyone. The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted to steal my company and then have me implement the stolen strategies that had convinced Papa Romano to give it to them. Of course, I replied smoothly. I'd be happy to help however I can. Over the next month, I watched my siblings attempt to run Romano Construction with growing satisfaction. Without understanding the fundamental operations they'd inherited, they made mistake after mistake while I documented everything. Marcus tried to negotiate the commercial real estate deals he'd promised Papa Romano, but he didn't understand the zoning regulations, permitting processes, or contractor relationships that made such projects feasible. Within 2 weeks, he'd alienated 3 potential clients and committed us to a project that would lose money from day one. Vincent's restoration division was even more disastrous. He scheduled jobs without understanding our equipment capabilities, promised timelines that were physically impossible, and hired subcontractors at rates that eliminated any possibility of profit. Isabella's luxury marketing campaign was perhaps the most embarrassing failure. She designed beautiful promotional materials and launched an expensive social media campaign, but she'd targeted the wrong demographic entirely and promised services we weren't equipped to provide. Meanwhile, I continued managing our existing projects with professional competence, keeping our core business profitable while my siblings systematically destroyed the expansions they'd used to justify stealing the company. But the real masterstroke came when Sarah and I discovered something that changed everything. While reviewing the ownership transfer documents more carefully, we found a critical error in the legal paperwork my siblings had filed. In their haste to exclude me from ownership, they'd structured the transfer in a way that violated several business partnership regulations. More importantly, they'd failed to properly document the intellectual property transfers, which meant I still legally owned all the strategies and business plans they'd used to convince Papa Romano to sign over the company. Sarah filed a comprehensive lawsuit challenging the ownership transfer on multiple grounds: fraud in the inducement, theft of intellectual property, and violations of partnership law. But we also included something my siblings never saw coming: a detailed business analysis showing how their management had already cost Romano Construction over $200,000 in the first month alone. The legal papers were served on a Tuesday morning during what was supposed to be a routine family business meeting. I arrived at the office to find my siblings, my parents, and Papa Romano all gathered in the conference room with expressions ranging from shock to fury. "What the hell is this, Adrian?" Marcus demanded, waving the legal documents in the air. "It's me protecting the company that I built," I replied calmly, taking my seat at the conference table. Vincent slammed his hand on the table. "You're suing your own family? Over business disagreements?" "I'm suing the people who defrauded me," I corrected. "The fact that we're related doesn't give you the right to steal my life's work." Isabella tried a different approach, her voice taking on the manipulative tone she'd perfected through years of social media. "Adrian, we're family. Families work things out together. We don't need lawyers and courts to resolve our differences." "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "Families work things out together. They don't hold secret meetings to steal from each other. They don't present each other's work as their own. And they definitely don't try to eliminate each other from businesses they helped build." Papa Romano had been silent throughout this exchange, but now he looked up with tired eyes. "Adrian, I don't understand. Your siblings said you weren't interested in running the company, that you preferred focusing on project management." This was the moment I'd been preparing for. I opened my laptop and began presenting the evidence Sarah and I had compiled. Every stolen strategy, every misrepresented conversation, every deliberate exclusion from planning meetings, all documented with emails, recordings, and witness statements. "Papa," I said gently, "they used my own business plans to convince you I wasn't capable of leadership. Every idea they presented as their collaborative innovation was actually work I'd done with you during our private strategy sessions." As I walked through the evidence, I watched my grandfather's expression change from confusion to understanding to absolute fury. Papa Romano was many things, but he'd never tolerated dishonesty, especially in business dealings. "Is this true?" he asked my siblings, his voice dangerously quiet. Marcus tried to defend their actions. "It wasn't like that, Papa. We were just building on Adrian's preliminary ideas and developing them into actionable strategies." "Building on them?" Papa Romano's voice rose. You told me these were your original concepts. You said Adrian was too focused on day-to-day operations to think strategically about the future. Vincent jumped in desperately. We never said Adrian wasn't valuable. We just thought the company needed fresh leadership to implement these new directions. Fresh leadership? Papa Romano stood up slowly, his hands gripping the edge of the conference table. You mean the leadership of people who couldn't run a profitable project if their lives depended on it? That's when I delivered the final blow. I presented the financial analysis showing exactly how much money my siblings had cost the company in their first month of ownership. The losses were staggering, and they were entirely due to fundamental misunderstandings of construction processes, client relationships, and project management. In 30 days, I said quietly, they've undone 2 years of growth and profitability. The commercial real estate project Marcus committed us to will lose $75,000. Vincent's restoration jobs are so poorly planned that we'll probably face lawsuits from angry clients. And Isabella's marketing campaign has generated exactly 0 qualified leads while costing us $15,000 in advertising expenses. The room fell silent as the reality sank in. My siblings had stolen the company using my ideas, then proven they were completely incapable of running it successfully. Papa Romano sat back down heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 78 years. How do we fix this? He asked quietly. We reverse the ownership transfer, I replied. We restructure the company properly, with clear roles based on actual capabilities rather than family politics. And we implement the expansion strategies correctly, with proper planning and execution. My siblings tried to protest, but they had no leverage left. The legal case against them was airtight, their management performance was disastrous, and Papa Romano was furious about being manipulated. The resolution took another month of negotiations, but the outcome was everything I'd hoped for. The ownership transfer was reversed, with me assuming majority control of Romano Construction. My siblings retained small equity stakes, but were removed from operational leadership roles. More importantly, Papa Romano insisted on formal apologies and restitution for the money their mismanagement had cost the company. Marcus ended up leaving the business entirely, finally pursuing his golf dreams with a job at a country club. Vincent found work as a part-time music instructor while maintaining a small administrative role with us. Isabella continued her influencer career while helping with occasional marketing projects under strict supervision. The best part of this resolution wasn't the vindication or the control of the company. It was watching Papa Romano's reaction when he realized how thoroughly he'd been manipulated by his own grandchildren. Adrian, he said to me privately after all the legal paperwork was finalized, I owe you an apology bigger than I can express. I let family politics cloud my judgment about business capabilities. You don't owe me anything, Papa, I replied. You built this company with your own hands. You had every right to leave it to whoever you thought would protect your legacy. But I almost gave it to people who would have destroyed it within a year, he said sadly. If you hadn't fought back, if you hadn't protected what we built together. That conversation helped me understand something important about family betrayal. Sometimes the people who hurt us most aren't acting out of malice. They're acting out of their own insecurities, their own fears about not being good enough, their own desperate need to prove themselves worthy of love and respect. My siblings didn't steal from me because they hated me. They stole from me because they couldn't bear the thought that I was more capable, more dedicated, and more deserving of Papa Romano's trust and legacy. Understanding their motivations didn't excuse their actions, but it helped me find a way to rebuild family relationships without compromising my boundaries or my business principles. Today, Romano Construction is more successful than ever. We've implemented all the expansion strategies my siblings stole, but with proper planning, adequate resources, and competent execution. Our commercial real estate division is profitable, our restoration services have a 6-month waiting list, and our luxury home marketing generates more qualified leads than we can handle. More importantly, I've learned to recognize the difference between family loyalty and family manipulation. Real family supports your success and celebrates your achievements. Fake family tries to diminish your accomplishments and steal your opportunities while expecting you to smile and accept it in the name of keeping the peace. The betrayal hurt deeply, and there are still family gatherings that feel awkward as we all navigate our new relationships. But I've never regretted fighting back, never regretted protecting what I'd built, and never regretted demanding the respect I'd earned through years of dedicated work. For anyone dealing with family betrayal, remember this. Blood relationship doesn't give people the right to steal from you, manipulate you, or expect you to sacrifice your future for their comfort. Real family builds each other up rather than tearing each other down for personal gain. Sometimes the most difficult thing you'll ever do is stand up to people you love when they're treating you badly. But protecting yourself and your accomplishments isn't selfish. It's necessary for maintaining any hope of genuine family relationships built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. My siblings and I have found a new balance that acknowledges our different strengths and capabilities while respecting the boundaries that protect us all from future betrayals. It's not the same close-knit family dynamic we once had, but it's honest, functional, and sustainable. Papa Romano often tells people that watching me fight for Romano Construction was the moment he truly understood what leadership looks like. Not just the ability to manage projects and generate profits, but the courage to protect what matters even when the threats come from people you love. The construction business taught me that strong foundations are essential for building anything that lasts. The same principle applies to family relationships. Without honesty, respect, and genuine support, even the closest families will eventually crumble under the weight of their own dysfunction. Thank you for following this journey of family betrayal, legal battles, and ultimate justice. If this story resonated with you, if you believe that family loyalty should flow both ways, please subscribe to our channel for more stories about standing up for yourself when the people closest to you try to tear you down. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is refusing to let them treat you badly. It forces everyone to grow up, face their own issues, and build relationships based on respect rather than manipulation. Romano Construction continues to thrive because we learn to value competence over comfort, results over relationships, and integrity over keeping the peace. Those same principles have helped us rebuild family bonds that are stronger and more honest than anything we had before the betrayal. The people who truly love you want to see you succeed, not steal your success. Remember that when family members ask you to sacrifice your future for their benefit, and never be afraid to protect what you've earned through honest work and dedication. Blood may be thicker than water, but respect is thicker than blood.